continuing to learn. I think it keeps you young and spirited, and it just adds overall to the quality of life.
That was Brenda Gilmore. Brenda has been called an icon in Middle Tennessee. Her involvement and accolades are countless. She's a dedicated community servant and leader, a mentor to many, and a woman who embodies style and grace. Her tenacity has brought services, joy, and life to others in so many ways due to her fierce advocacy. She's well known for bringing out the best in others while also lightening the mood with impromptu dance parties. Her daughter Erica is following in her footsteps and is also very active in our community.
I'm Sally Hussey, the CEO of 50 Forward, and we elected to launch this podcast because we know older adults have such inspiring stories and wisdom worth sharing. We have now all learned that social connections are critical to our well-being. This podcast is made possible by 50 Forward, the leading resource for adults 50 plus in Middle Tennessee who seek to live longer, more fulfilling lives.
You're listening to Squeeze the Day, where we talk to extraordinary people over the age of 50 who are living their best life now. Their stories of a well-lived life are both inspiring and encouraging to all of us as we seek to navigate a meaningful and purpose-driven second chapter in our life. I'm Susan Sizemore, Communications Director for 50 Forward. So let's get started. Brenda, you're a student of life. With an undergraduate degree from Tennessee State University, a Master of Human Resource Development from Vanderbilt, and as a graduate of the Tennessee Government Executive Institute, Leadership Vanderbilt, and Leadership Nashville, why was getting this varied education so important to you?
Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this important podcast. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm 68 years old, so I guess I'm in my mature years, but I believe in continuing to learn. I think it keeps you young and spirited, and it just adds overall to the quality of life. So I would just say anytime there's a course to be taken, a webinar to sit in on, a workshop or a panel discussion, I'm all in because I want to continue to learn and just to have a better quality of life.
That's terrific. I see that in you, and it's wonderful to hear you say that. I know at one point you worked at Vanderbilt for years as a director, and then you retired, but now you're in public service. What led you to public service?
I've always been interested in helping the community since I was a little girl. I grew up in Gallatin, Tennessee, a small town, and I can remember when I was a young girl in my preteen years that I got some volunteers together, and we gathered Coke bottles and 7-Up bottles, and I'm not even sure they still make 7-Ups. And we would wash those bottles out and sell them for 5 cents each. And from that, we would go buy toiletries for seniors. So I think my love for seniors and my love for community service has always been something that has been in my spirit, something that I was born with. I think it's a part of my DNA, and it was just a natural transition for me to go from preteen years to giving back to the community as a volunteer and then finally as an elected official.
What a beautiful story. Had no idea that there was some senior roots or assisting of older adults in the early part of your life. That's so cool. So how did it feel to become one of the first women on our Metro Council or the state legislature?
You know, it's a nice feeling to be the first, but I think it's even more gratifying and rewarding to know that you've been placed in a certain space to help people and to help their lives be better, to help them be the best themselves as they can be. And I think that that's why I had a calling on my life to run for Metro Councilwoman and then state representative, and now I'm a state senator. So although I may not have been the first on the Metro Council, I am very proud that I was the first woman in my district to run in the Metro Council, and that I feel like that I really made a significant difference while I was there.
So you could have gone anywhere with your career, but you elected to stay in Middle Tennessee and serve our community, and I'm curious to know why that is.
Well, I would say being an elected official, at least I have not found out the trick to be rich yet. Again, a passion of love. I think it's a labor of love to feel like that you are at the table, you gather as much information as you can, you take it back out in the community to help improve lives. And sometimes, Susan, it can be something as simpler as helping someone stay in their home when they're being evicted. Those are the type of things that may never hit the front page of the Tennessean, but those are the things that warm my heart and know that I'm making a difference in people's lives.
Very profound. And just speaking about older adults and housing for people in general in our area, let's talk a little bit about the growth in Middle Tennessee and especially in Nashville. It continues to be an oasis for so many people. Why do you think that's so?
Nashville has the best of everything. It's still small enough to have that small town rural feel, and yet it's large enough to be big city with all that it can offer in the way of arts and sports and diversity in almost anything that you look at. In housing, you can be in one part of the city and housing may be $100,000 or less, and you'll be in another part of the city and it may be $1 million homes. But I think that Nashville values that diversity, and that's why people are attracted.
So, Brenda, Nashville has a history for being at the center of things. We have also been called the Athens of the South, Music City, and at one point we had roughly 100 individuals relocating here every day. Why do you think that is?
Again, I think it has to do with the diversity in almost anything that you look at, whether it's housing, whether it's banking, healthcare. We're just rich with diversity. And even when you look at music, some people think we only have country music, but we have every kind of music that you can imagine. And I'm not sure that many people know how that theme Music City got coined, but it started with the Jubilee Singers. They were students at Fisk University, and Fisk University was having a very hard time financially. And these students went to England. They sang for the Queen there. And that's how they raised money to sustain Fisk University. And that's how the term Music City was actually coined. The Queen of England coined that phrase.
That is so cool. And I think I ran across that at some point in the last few years and thought, how could I have worked in the music business, the country music business, and not known that history, that little fact? And there are lots of things that are happening here in addition to country. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. We've got some big news lately, and I'm sure that you've been involved with a lot of this discovery of music as well as bringing it forward in our fair city.
Actually, it's being opened virtually, but the National Museum of African American Music just opened here in Nashville. It's the only museum in the entire United States that's devoted entirely to music. And it's every type of music that you can imagine: jazz, country, pop, just everything. I've not been able to go in person because of COVID regulations, but I cannot wait. And I feel a special sense of pride for this music museum because it took 20 years to actually open it. But I was a Metro Councilwoman. Howard Gentry, who's now the criminal court clerk, and I were colleagues on the Metro Council, and we hosted the very first focus group to see what Nashville wanted and what they wanted that museum to look like. So it is with a great sense of pride that I really value and appreciate this National Museum of African American Music.
And well, you should. I think for Nashville to be home to that sort of iconic new place and for all of us to get to go experience that music, I just can't wait. And in a lot of ways, too, I think it's really interesting for you to share how long it took for something like that to come to fruition. 20 years, a lot of early conversations, but there's a lot that goes into it all along the way.
That's right. And a lot of people who help make it possible during those 20 years. So it's really a shared appreciation of all those people. Absolutely. And I'm also proud of my daughter, who was a Metro Councilwoman maybe about 5 years ago. She served 12 years in the Metro Council, but she fought very hard for that museum to have presence on Broadway. So I celebrate her for doing that. She was a young girl when she was an elected official, but she knew how important it was for that museum to have a presence on Broadway. And so, yes, I'm very happy about that.
That is huge, and especially since it stands very close to the historic Ryman Auditorium.
Exactly.
Really, really neat. Had no idea she had a part in that either. Let's talk a little bit about the community and the civil unrest. We had some really historic things that happened here years ago, and some of your friends and community leaders were involved in lunch counter sit-ins and freedom marches to bring unity. Will you share a story or two about them and the impact it's had on your life?
During the early civil rights in the 60s, I was a young girl and I wasn't able to actually go out and march. But Congressman Lewis and Dr. Martin Luther King, just having lived during their time, I think that they had a profound impact on my life. And it made me feel like I had a great sense of responsibility to give back and to try to make this a more just world. So after I came to Nashville, I really worked hard to get to know some of the freedom riders, and many of them are still living. I've had an opportunity to work with them shoulder to shoulder. Each time that there's been an anniversary in D.C. Regarding the I Have a Dream or the right to vote, I've always gone to D.C. and participated in those marches. And then this summer, Susan, I'm very proud of those young people who got out in the streets and let their voices be heard to try to make this a more just world. And I think it started with the actual death of Mr. George Floyd, when the police officer put his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, and as a result, Mr. Floyd died. And these young people came out in the streets for 62 straight days. Many of them sacrificed being in college at that time. It was extremely hot weather, sometime nearing 100 degrees. Sometime it was raining. But they were out there exercising their First Amendment rights and sending a strong message that things right now are not quite fair when you look at people of color, particular Black people and brown people, and I'm proud of them. And I think what was different with this protest in 2020 is that it was primarily young people, and it wasn't just African Americans. It was Asians, it was white children, and I'm just so proud of those young people. Some of them got in trouble, and we worked very hard to get their records expunged, but overall, it was peaceful protests.
You know, that's so interesting because I remember the media coverage on that. And one of the things I think is that weren't there a couple of young girls, like late teenage girls, who started the initiative through social media and they just rallied a whole crowd behind them and it grew?
They were. Some of them were 15 and 16-year-old young women, and they were able to rally a march, peaceful march of over 10,000 people.
Those are the change agents of tomorrow, without a doubt.
They are. That was pretty amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about women's rights and things that are happening to help professional development for women. We first met when we were both involved with the community nonprofit group called Cable, and I'm curious to know what made you join that group.
At the time that I joined, I don't think that there had been very many African American women who were participating in that group. And I wanted to learn as much as I could and to bring it back to my community regarding strong business, women leaders, as well as entrepreneurs. And since that time, I think that we've had, again, more diversity in the leadership. But I'm very proud of those women. They were all very welcoming. I didn't find anybody that wasn't willing to help in almost any area that I needed some help in. I'm especially proud. I had a friend that was running for judge, And so I contacted one of the prior presidents, and I told her that my friend was running for judge. And I said, can cable help her? And she said, well, we're a nonprofit and we can't do that. But what I can do is I can ask some of the former presidents to sign a letter of support for her. And I was just so touched by that because this group was so resourceful. Almost any project that you were involved in, there was somebody there that was willing to lend a helping hand. So it was a great sisterhood, and I still have some lasting friendships, including you, Susan. And I value that experience, yes.
I feel exactly the same way. At some point, there was a woman in cable who was on the board with me at one point, and I won't share her name, but I know you know her well. And she said, cable is like my Google for everything. And I said, that is an amazing analogy and soundbite, but it certainly has rung true throughout my career. There are so many touch points that first individuals who came into my radar or into my world first through cable.
I never had a single cable sister to turn me down for anything that I was involved in. And so I really appreciate those friendships.
So let's talk a little bit about women supporting one another. I know that you're involved in some other groups that keep you grounded. Do you want to talk just a little bit about some of them?
Well, I appreciate my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Especially, it was founded by 22 college women, and it was a time when it was segregation. And we participated in the first march for women having the right to vote. And as you know, we have just celebrated the 100th year anniversary for women having the right to vote. So I'm very proud of my sorority. I work with also the League of Women Voters, and the League of Women Voters have always been on the forefront fighting for voters' rights and just almost any issue where they feel like it's not based on equality, but some other factors. I'm involved in many, many civic organizations, including the Links Incorporated. It's a civic organization. National Hookup of Black Women. I work with them. And probably more than I can think of right now. Top Ladies of Distinction, I work with them. But usually, almost any group, when they call and ask me, it's hard for me to say no. I've got to learn to say no. And of course, my passion is 50 Forward, working with seniors, and the YMCA. Those are my two passions in my life. I have many, many charities and nonprofits that I work for, but the two passions are working with seniors and also working with people, helping them to improve the quality of life by improving their health at the YMCA.
That's so much commitment, and it's so cool to see what has really fueled your love for civic engagement. And there's one thing that I know I've asked you before, but I just wonder if other people in the community want to know. When I first met you, I noticed that you had really a fondness for the color red. So I'm curious to know how that came about, and tell us a bit about red in your life.
I know when people look at me, they probably think I wear red because of my sorority, because those are the colors of my sorority. But I love red because it just energizes me. It lifts my spirits. When I wear other colors, I feel okay, but I really feel vibrant and ready to take on the world when I wear red.
I love it. Rev it up with red. Tell us a little bit about your love of fashion, too. I've seen you in many a different chapeau or hat, and I know that you've participated in many hat fashion shows. So I'm just wondering what kind of led you to your love for hats.
We came up with this idea of Hats Off to Bordeaux as a fundraiser to provide scholarships and help programming in the Bordeaux area. So that was a fundraiser. And we emphasized wearing hats and invited community leaders and also members of a 50 forward Bordeaux to wear hats. And since that time, it's just a fun thing to do. People always notice you when you wear hats. And now that I'm a senior, I've also joined the Red Hat Society. And that's a lot of fun, too, because we don't have any rules. You don't have any regulations. You don't have officers. It's just all about having fun. And that's the place I'm almost in my life where I just want to have fun 100% of the time.
I love it. I've seen those Red Hatters in motion, and you can tell that they love life to the fullest.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about, I met you and Harry, your husband, at a luncheon for a woman who was celebrating her 100th birthday. And I'm just curious to know, why is the art of aging, but why are older adults too so important to you?
Well, one thing, my grandmother raised me. And so I have a special place in my heart for seniors. And the lady that you met then, Miss Susie, she's now 105 years old.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful? Such a
amazing.
blessing. But as a result of my grandmother raising me and the love I had for her and the appreciation I had for her, there's just a special place in my heart for doing everything that I can to try to improve the lives of seniors. After all, they are the foundation of this country. We stand on their shoulders.
That's absolutely true. Question that I've wanted to ask you, you've talked a lot about circles and sororities and organizations that you're involved in. I counted about 30 listings under your community involvement at some point when I was researching your bio. And I wonder how you manage all that and a personal life as well.
Well, I've just been blessed with a strong family support. I have a very small family. I was an only child. My husband's only child, and my daughter's an only child, and her daughter is an only child. But we do things. We figure out a way to fulfill our civic engagements and to include each other. So that's a way where we are able to spend some personal time with each other and still give back to the community.
That's beautiful. So your daughter, Erica, described you on Facebook as an awesome mother, a wife, a grandmother, a friend, an advocate, and a community servant. And it goes without saying, you've already mentioned this, that she appears to be following in your footsteps. Tell us a little bit more about how that happened and how you mentor others.
I was so surprised when Erica decided that she wanted to be an elected official. I never thought, because I was always dragging her around to different community meetings and things like that when she was growing up. So I never visualized her going into public service. But I remember one day when she lived in North Nashville, she said, I want somebody good to run for my district. And I just looked at her and she says, what does that mean? I said, well, maybe that's your call to action. And she ran, and I knew she would win, but I didn't think she would win without a runoff because there were about 4 people in that particular race. But she worked hard, knocking on doors, and she won. She was a very young girl at the time representing North Nashville. She served 8 years in her district as a district council person, and then another 8 years as councilwoman at large. And now she's been blessed. She worked hard and won being a trustee of Nashville-Davidson County. And I think she may be the only elected official that has ever won every single precinct in Nashville-Davidson County.
Wow, that is tremendous. She is dynamic, and I have to say she follows in the right footsteps, but I think she seems just very confident, and what a gift and a blessing to all of us. But I'm sure as a mother, you take great pride in that as well.
I do. In fact, I go to her for advice now.
That's great. It's her turn. It's the circle.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Here's a question we're going to ask every guest, and I'd like to run it by you too. What's the one piece of advice your parents or an older adult shared with you that at the time you thought was so silly, but now it rings true in your everyday life?
I think just instilling in me to always do my best. And I don't think my mother or my grandmother visualized me being a public servant or elected official, but they expected me always to do my best and to give back and to make whatever space I was in better. They probably didn't articulate it that way, but I knew that's what they meant. My grandmother used to say, every time I'd leave the house, be good. I knew what be good meant. She didn't have even a high school education, and nor did my mother, but they just instilled in me to be good. And so I took that to mean that whatever situation I'm involved in, whatever organization, wherever I go, I want to leave it better than I found it.
What a gift she gave us and gave you by planting that seed.
Thank you.
So, Brenda, what is it that you do to squeeze the day?
Well, just trying to make everybody's life better and my own life better as well. And one of the challenges that have been in my life, Susan, is exercising. So I've gotten back to exercising the last, 6 weeks, and I'm doing it almost on a daily basis. I haven't lost any weight, but I'm feeling healthier, and I think that that's where I'm squeezing today. And when I see everybody and I say, good morning, how you doing? Good evening. And when that brings a smile on their face, then that's the way I'm squeezing the day.
Well, if memory serves me correctly, you were the woman who prompted people at the end of one luncheon, a cable luncheon, it might have been the end of your term. You're a dancing diva, and you encouraged everybody to get up and dance.
And you won't believe this, but I'm a horrible dancer, but I think it makes you, I think it makes you feel so spirited, and it brings a smile on your face. And besides that, it's a good way to exercise and have fun. I'm all about having fun.
Amen. I love that. I think I saw you doing a little birthday boogie, too, on one of the Facebook posts that when I was stalking you earlier this month.
Yes. In fact, we just celebrated one of the seniors that always comes to Hats Off to Bordeaux, and she was 89 years old. And so we were dancing. She had us dancing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. What an amazing life of leadership we're witnessing from interviews and stories such as yours. We're grateful.
Thank you. It was an honor to be with you, Susan, and I value our friendship over the years.
Now we challenge everyone listening to go squeeze the day.